Answering the question, what is a country, might seem simple. But once you start peeling back the layers, it becomes a lot more complex. Many institutions, including the United Nations, agree that countries must meet basic criteria to be considered a sovereign state, such as having a functioning government. International relations scholars often share this view, seeing that any state that doesn't meet these qualifications is lacking statehood. This promotes a perspective that sovereignty is binary. You either have it, or you don't. This binary view encourages a realpolitik approach to international relations, where states are seen as rational actors making decisions in the name of security. But what exactly is a functioning government, and when is a country considered to lack one? And does joining larger multilateral institutions weaken a country's sovereignty? This simplistic view of sovereignty makes it hard to answer these questions and ignores the complex ways states operate on the international stage. War also plays a critical role in shaping a country's identity and functionality. How does conflict disrupt the fundamental elements of statehood? And at what point does it change how a population sees itself within the nation? On the flip side, how does achieving peace in a region affect a country's relationships with its neighbours and its people? In this video essay, we'll dive deep into the intricate components that make up a country. We'll consider how peace is achieved, the components that contribute to that peace, and how sovereignty is divided and reapportioned. For example, we'll look at the regions of Europe and the Middle East. Both have achieved peace, but at different levels, and the countries in each region have different sovereign arrangements to reach that peace. By examining these regions, we can see how countries operate in the modern landscape, and better answer the question, what is a country? When we think about what defines a country, the Montevideo Convention of 1933 provides a widely accepted framework. According to this convention, a country must have 4 key components: a permanent population, a defined territory, a functioning government, and the ability to engage in international relations. In international relations, realists and neorealists view the sovereign state as the ultimate form of political organisation. They argue that in a world without central authority to enforce rules, countries must prioritise their defence. For these theorists, sovereignty is absolute. You either have it or you don't. For example, allowing foreign troops to be stationed on your soil is seen as compromising a country's sovereignty because it diminishes your control over your territory and military decisions. Realists tend to distrust multilateral agreements, believing that countries are likely to break them if it serves their interests. On the other hand, liberalism offers a more flexible view of sovereignty. Liberals see sovereignty as a collection of rights and obligations that can be shared and distributed both locally and internationally. Historical examples include the decolonization efforts, like when the Algerian nationalists and the French government agreed that France could maintain military bases and oil facilities after Algerian independence. Liberals argue that such agreements, although complex, can help resolve conflicts by addressing underlying issues related to sovereignty. However, there is often another overlooked aspect of what makes up a country. What is a nation? The international relations scholar Ingmar Carlsson defines a nation as an idea searching for a reality, in which a minority often violently forced upon a majority with standardization as a goal, with an iron glove as an instrument to eradicate previous diversity. Tracing a country's origins to one where there is a national identity and one that is widely recognized by the wider population is difficult to assume. For instance, the notion of being French wasn't widely accepted until at least the Third Republic, despite France's long-established borders. Local identities like Breton, Basque, and Corsican still hold significant importance for many people. The concept of a nation revolves around identity. It's about who we are and how we see ourselves. This sense of national identity is subjective. Even if it's a collective of subjectivity, it stands in stark contrast to the state, which is about institutions, structures, and systems, the objective features that define a country. However, a country's ability to function is also impacted by war. Its destructive impact extends across the core elements that define a country. War brings about devastation, famine, and direct harm to the 4 main pillars of statehood. It results in atrocities such as genocide, mass civilian casualties, and the displacement of populations. Additionally, war disrupts the governance structures, destabilizing governments and hindering their ability to provide essential public services. Diplomatic measures such as the withdrawal of diplomats are often employed to pressure belligerent parties into ceasing hostile actions. This war not only inflicts immediate harm but also undermines the fundamental functions of a state and their international relations. States go to war for various reasons, however. Benjamin Miller points to the state-to-nation imbalance as a primary cause. This imbalance occurs when the territorial boundaries of the state don't align with the national identities of their population. In regions where the imbalance is high, the risk of conflict increases for several reasons. On national grounds, ethnic groups may seek to secede from the state they don't identify with, as seen in Catalonia's push for independence from Spain. Conversely, pan-nationalism might drive the creation of larger states uniting ethnic groups across existing borders, like the short-lived United Arab Republic between Egypt and Syria. Revisionist states dissatisfied with the current order can lead to territorial demands based on national and historic claims. Russia's actions in Ukraine exemplify this, as it seeks to justify territorial expansion through historic ties. Diversionary wars are also a factor. Countries may also use external conflicts to divert attention from internal problems or to unite desperate groups against a common enemy. Transborder instability is also another problem. Poor governance in one country can destabilize its neighbours, leading to regional conflict. The Syrian civil war with its myriad of international interventions is a prime example. When we consider how peace is achieved, it is not as simple as seeing two countries not engaged in conflict. However, Benjamin Miller identifies three distinct levels of peace: cold, normal, and warm. In a state of cold peace, countries aren't engaged in open warfare, nor are they overly threatening each other with force. However, there can still be pockets of low-intensity violence, like communal clashes, which aren't likely to escalate into border conflicts anytime soon. Essentially, the fundamental issues causing these conflicts are managed but not resolved. This means the threat of return to violence always lingers in the background. Moving to normal peace, the probability of war drops significantly. This level is achieved when most, if not all, of the deep-rooted issues that sparked conflicts have been addressed and resolved. Despite this progress, the possibility of war hasn't been eliminated from the political landscape. What sets normal peace apart is that relationships among states start to evolve beyond just governmental interactions. They begin to involve societies as well. This broader engagement helps to further reduce the chance of conflict as mutual understanding and cooperation increase. Finally, we have warm peace. At this level, the idea of war in the region becomes unimaginable. Even if some disputes remain unresolved, the use of force to settle them is no longer considered an option. Warm peace is characterized by extensive transnational relationships and a high degree of regional interdependence. Conflicts are transcended through regional cooperation in areas such as joint economic ventures, trade, and tackling common issues like environmental challenges. Here, the region enjoys a deep, mutual understanding and cooperation, making a notion of war almost inconceivable. To better understand how these levels of peace work in practice, it's worth looking at two regions that emphasize this: Europe and the Middle East. After the Second World War, the Middle East was a hotbed of tension and conflict. Despite many states gaining independence, the aspiration for large territorial claims continued. Various ethnic groups, like those of the Palestinians and the Kurds spread across Iraq, Syria, Iran, and Turkey, began advocating for their own states. Movements pushing for the unification of states under ideologies like Pan-Arabism also gained momentum. The region's conflicts also evolved around competing ethnic groups striving for independence or unity based on shared identities. The Cold War period, particularly from 1948 to 1973, saw a great power competition exacerbating these tensions. As Soviet influence waned, however, the US emerged as the predominant power, helping to usher in a precarious peace. The Middle East exemplifies how an imbalance between state boundaries and their national identities can fuel conflict, while political and religious motivations also play a significant role. Primary source of tension is the high state-to-nation imbalance. The US played a significant role in fostering a more stable peace by moderating conflicts and initiating a peace process, particularly between the Arabs and the Israelis. This peace, however, remains a cold peace. Tension and conflict still exist, but are generally kept in check. With financial aid to Israel, peace treaties with Egypt and Jordan, the destruction of the Iraqi military power, and the collapse of the Soviet Union reshaped the political landscape and established dominant regional powers. Europe too suffered from a high nation-to-state imbalance. Competition among regional and colonial powers led to two devastating world wars in the first half of the 20th century. This imbalance contributed to wars for German and Italian unification, nationalist disputes between Germany and France over Alsace-Lorraine, the pan-Slavic aspirations in Eastern Europe. These issues directly led to the First World War. Later, German demands for unification in Central and Eastern Europe, which contributed to the Second World War. After the Second World War, however, several factors helped reduce this imbalance. Millions of Germans were deported back to Germany. The division of Europe between the Soviet and Allied forces reduced its capability, and Soviet control of Eastern Europe managed to solve the national problem, though not fully resolving it. A more permanent solution was needed, leading to a European approach for regional integration. Beginning with the establishment of the European Coal and Steel Community in 1951, and later the European Community in 1957. This eliminated trade barriers and facilitated the free movement of capital and people, tying the region's development together and incentivizing cooperation. This cooperation can be seen in the peaceful resolution of the Saar question, where the region economically linked to the Franks, but politically autonomous returned to Germany after a referendum. The Maastricht Treaty of 91, the creation of the Euro in 99, the expansion into Eastern Europe and the Schengen Agreement for common border policies further reinforced the integration. By entwining their economies and political systems, European countries reduced the risk of conflict, promoting a stable and lasting peace. While both Europe and the Middle East have achieved a level of peace, the difference in their approaches have led to vastly different outcomes. The Middle East, often relying on an external hegemonic influence like that of the US, maintains a cold peace, where underlying tensions persist. Europe, on the other hand, fostered a more integrated and cooperative regional system, promoting lasting peace through shared sovereignty and mutual interdependence. If we refer to the table again, we can see that some of the problems are temporarily mitigated, but not fully resolved. This means that the potential for conflict is highly likely, as many of the state-to-nation issues are unresolved, such as issues related to the recognition of Israel, the normalization of Syrian and Israeli relations, the legitimacy of boundaries, and security arrangements. Even in the two Arab states that have signed peace agreements with Israel, tensions between Israel and Palestine also remain contentious. The events of October 7th of 2023, a surprise attack on Israel, quickly led to conflict between Israel and Hamas, leading to a humanitarian crisis. Peace is only stable so long as the United States or any other hegemony acts to moderate conflicts between regional powers. We can see when looking at another table, intervention on the global stage from another hegemon only results in a cold peace, whereas regional approach, which focuses on integration at the regional level, leads to more lasting peace. Since countries are more regionally tied together, it promotes better practices for communication, resolving conflicts more easily. Alexander Corley calls this incomplete contract, which refers to a form of hybrid sovereignty where states will agree to share or delegate certain sovereign functions to third parties or lease territories for specific duration. This approach allows for transitional periods before exclusive sovereign arrangements are finalized. By delegating specific state functions to third-party organizations, both parties adhere to common principles and procedures, promoting stability. Iraq and Palestine are good examples of how incomplete contracts are negotiated and how their outcomes have led to cold peace. Iraq and Palestine share a lot in common. Both have two flashpoint moments in history which sought to redefine their sovereignty. Following the 2003 invasion of Iraq, the US took control and began rebuilding the country. As Iraq regained sovereignty, there was a gradual transfer of power from the US to Iraq, culminating in Iraq regaining most of its functions by 2008. The 1993 Oslo Accords was an attempt to do the same thing, which aimed to establish a peace through a two-state solution that would eventually lay the grounds for a future democratic Palestinian state. Both are incomplete contracts, as they are both flexible arrangements to solve issues for a later date that can be renegotiated at any point. Contracts will often specify the initial terms of the exchange, but will also neglect several contingencies. Thus, the incomplete contract will provide the starting point but not necessarily the long-term specifics for the exchange relationship. The US and Iraq governed Iraq's return to sovereignty during the rebuilding process. However, there was still tension around the topic of military basing, which was shelved for a later date. The Palestinian Authority was given limited authority over a series of areas in the West Bank, divided into 3 areas. A map of Israel and Palestine and the overlapping areas of control show this. The Palestinian Authority governs security and civilian affairs in urban areas, A, and civilian affairs in rural areas, B, while Israel retains control over Israeli settlements, the Jordan Valley and the bypass roads in Area C. Since Israel's withdrawal from Gaza in 2005, the Palestinian Authority has maintained full jurisdiction there. However, Israeli restrictions of movement have turned Gaza into a somewhat described as an air prison. For the Palestinian Authority, the incomplete contract would hopefully lead to a full sovereign arrangement. However, the Accords only ever prioritize Israeli security, hindering the creation of a fully sovereign Palestinian state. Cooley argues that states that hold residual rights over control of an asset will be empowered to appropriate any surplus rent or revenue stream at renegotiation, even if the other party remains more powerful absolutely. In this case, Israel is leveraging its position arranged through the Oslo Accords to maintain disproportionate power in its bilateral relationship with the Palestinian Authority, allowing it to extract more resources. The Palestinian Authority's heavy reliance on Israel for economic resources and control over key functions highlights the imbalance in this bilateral relationship. In contrast, the European Union represents a more successful model of hybrid sovereignty. Member states share and delegate sovereign functions through multilateral institutions. Efforts to adopt a common constitution and the Lisbon Treaty of 2007 advanced these goals. The EU's approach to hybrid sovereignty through shared arrangements and common policies fosters a high degree of stability and peace compared to the Middle East. By balancing power amongst member states and promoting cooperation, the EU has created a more integrated and peaceful region. Sovereignty and statehood are complex and dynamic, influenced by theoretical perspectives and real-world circumstances. Realist theories of sovereignty are absolute, where any compromise like foreign military basing undermines statehood. Liberalism, on the other hand, sees sovereignty as a bundle of rights and obligations that can be shared and renegotiated, helping to resolve conflicts and promote stability. National identity adds another layer of complexity. International relations scholars highlight that national identity is often constructed and evolving, influenced by historical events and cultural shifts. Conflicts arise where there is a state-to-nation imbalance, as seen in the Middle East. War disrupts a country's core elements, leading to long-term instability, while peace can be achieved at different levels, from cold to normal to warm. Europe has achieved lasting peace through regional integration and shared sovereignty, reducing the risk of conflict. The Middle East, in contrast, remains in a state of cold peace with persistent underlying tensions. Incomplete contracts like those in Iraq and Palestine show the complexities of modern sovereignty. These flexible arrangements manage sovereignty and conflict adaptively, but often leave significant issues unresolved. The European Union exemplifies successful hybrid sovereignty, with member states sharing and delegating functions through multilateral institutions. This approach has fostered stability and peace, demonstrating the benefits of regional integration. Understanding what makes a country often involves recognizing the fluidity of sovereignty, the importance of national identity, and the diverse approaches to achieving and maintaining peace. This deeper appreciation helps us grasp the complexities of defining and sustaining statehood in the modern world. If you've enjoyed this video, please take a chance to subscribe and like this video. Thank you.